A tough landscape, a short growing season, a cool climate, and non-arable land. Growing fruits and vegetables in Northern Ontario is no cakewalk, but a cadre of northern farmers is aiming to change that. Joining us now with more in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Henriet DeBruin. She is the owner of DeBruin's Greenhouses. And Henriet, we're glad you could come on TVO with us tonight. How are you doing?
Great, thanks for having me tonight.
Not at all. Let's just find out a bit about you. How long have you been farming in Thunder Bay for?
Well, I grew up on a local dairy farm, so I've been involved in farming most of my life. I now own and operate a greenhouse business. We grow hydroponic tomatoes, cucumbers, and lettuce for local sales. Okay,
for those of us who aren't necessarily big on the nomenclature, hydroponic means what?
So we grow on water, basically. We don't use soil. We grow actually all our produce on water.
Okay, and what is your growing season?
Well, actually, the tomatoes are in the ground are on the water right now. We've just put them in this past week, and we hope to go till around the beginning of November is when we start to turn the furnaces off and stop for the year. So most of the other crops are usually planted in the ground around May long weekend. Usually by May, most farmers are on the fields. So depending on when the snow goes away, and every year is a little different. So usually from May till October is when our growing season in the north is.
And dumb question, but what do you do the rest of the year?
Get ready for the next spring.
Gotcha, okay. We've talked to lots of farmers on this program over the years, and I have to confess most of them are from south of the French River, so I just want to know whether the challenges that you would face as a farmer in Northern Ontario are any different from the ones that the farmers we talk to down here face.
I think farming is very generic in that way. Farming is farming. It doesn't matter where you actually grow. We all have our own challenges and our own unique difficulties. We obviously have a shorter growing season, so that's one of our challenges, but we've developed crops and we've developed things that actually will grow in this climate. And we do have a bit of a microclimate in Thunder Bay, so things do grow well here.
They do grow well. How come?
Just the microclimate that we have, I do believe, and the research stations that are affiliated from this area, from New Liskeard and Thunder Bay Research Station, they've developed crops that actually will grow in the northern climate. And we do have a lot more sun in the summertime than you do have in southern Ontario. So our daylight hours are a lot longer, and our crops grow that much faster.
When you're down in the south and people ask you what you do and you tell them, well, I'm a farmer in Thunder Bay, do they sometimes scratch their head?
Yeah, that's kind of a puzzlement. Some people don't realize how much farms and how much agriculture is actually here in Thunder Bay. We have a large dairy sector here. We've have 28 very viable dairy farms. We used to have a lot more, but having said that, the farm sizes have gotten that much bigger, so we are producing the same amount of milk just on larger farms. We have a lot more animals up here. We have a lot of beef, pork, chicken. We have elk up here in the area as well. We have lots of vegetable farms. We have 2 large potato producers in Thunder Bay, so it's a lot of growing that people don't realize in southern Ontario.
Let me get a better understanding as well of your energy usage, because I would assume, but you straighten me out if I'm wrong on this, I would assume that in the greenhouse business, you're using an awful lot of energy, admittedly good sunshine, but an awful lot of energy to keep that place warm enough to be able to do what you do. Is that right?
Well, we use natural gas, and it's not any different than the growers in Leamington. We still have to have a certain amount of temperature in our buildings. We start a little bit later in the year, and we have a bit more, that way we don't grow all throughout the year. So we're not really growing in the coldest climate of the year. So energy cost is always an issue for any type of grower, any type of farmer.
Is it particularly bad right now, the cost of energy?
The cost of energy isn't really any different than the year before. Electricity costs have gone up, but energy costs, they've seemed to kind of level out a bit. So that's something that it's always been a factor, but it's something that when you have a business, you look at.
Gotcha. Now, Henry, you do say that there are different challenges, obviously, being a farmer in Northern Ontario, but I've also heard you say that this is notwithstanding all of that, a growing sector. How so?
We have a large amount of farmers that are right now trying to expand. We have Thunder Bay and area food strategy we're getting food into local hospitals and daycares, and we're trying to get that strategy going. So that's something that we've looked into. We also have the Thunder Bay Country Market. We developed that 18 years ago, and that's a very a group of farmers that have come together and developed this local farmers market, and it's basically been growing in leaps and bounds in the last couple of years. And the local population in Thunder Bay really wants local food. So it's something that we find as farmers, we're trying to catch up and trying to keep the product there that they so want.
Local people want local food. Is that a new phenomenon?
It's not really new. We've been doing this we've been growing fruits and vegetables now for probably 15, 18 years. We've been affiliated with certain restaurants in town for, I'm going to say 15 years. So we have a list of 15 to 16 local food restaurants and stores that buy our product. So just for ourselves, I mean, we can do our deliveries on a Monday or a Thursday afternoon, drop off our tomatoes at a local restaurant, do our rest of our deliveries, and come back and have a local DeBruin salad at the Caribou or at Bistro and places like that. So it really is very much, people want local food, and it's not something new in Thunder Bay, but it is certainly expanding.
Well, you obviously don't have local food in the wintertime, so what do you do then?
Well, they actually develop a winter menu, so there is some issues with that. I mean, things like potato, squash, and carrots, I mean, those are things that you can be kept in cold cellars. So there are challenges. I mean, it's not any different than Southern Ontario. There's a lot of products there as well that don't have, that are not year-round. But it's an interesting thing that has to be developed.
Gotcha. Now, you're going to forgive this stereotype, but obviously, again, people south of the French River, when they think of Northern Ontario, they think forestry, they think mining. Sorry, Henriette, but they don't think agriculture. Do you think that we should start to be thinking more about agriculture when we think about Northern Ontario? Oh,
definitely. The Thunder Bay area has, I mean, we have 60% of, or 90% actually, of all of Ontario lies north of Parry Sound. So we do have only 7% of the farmland right now, but we have large acres of land and lots of usable farmland. So it's going to be something that eventually there's going to be a lot more farms in Thunder Bay and a lot more food being grown here. Now we do have lots of beef and dairy here, but there's also room for vegetable production up here as well.
Are your summers, you know, with all of the talk about climate change and so on, I want to get a sense as well about whether or not your summers are getting hotter and longer. I know this winter has been brutal, but what about summers?
The summers are quite warm up here. We do start finding that by May, beginning of May, we are starting to get warm. And the last couple of years, our summers are getting later into the year. So our first killing frost isn't usually happening till into September now, where before it was earlier. So our season is getting a little bit longer, which is also helping with crop production. The corn and the grain and the soybeans that have been developed for this area are growing, and they're growing really well.
Can you actually process the food up there as well?
Right now we have certain areas we are doing some small-scale production of, but that's one of the infrastructure things that we are looking at as to getting more food production in this area.
Got a guess as to what percentage of people up there make their living on the land, not again through timber and not through forestry or mining, but actually in agriculture?
I'm not exactly sure the numbers. I do know that 23% of the area is agriculture based. So we do have a large farm area. If you're looking at just Thunder Bay District, we do have a large farm and agricultural base here in the area. We have a really good research facility as well that is producing good crops for us to grow. So Thunder Bay does have a large, and I don't know the exact numbers, unfortunately. I don't know those off the top of my head. So.
Okay, but do I infer that with a longer growing season in the summertime and with the technological advancements that you are developing over the years, this is going to be a bigger thing going forward? Is that fair to say?
That's what we're hoping, and that's definitely what we're pushing in Northern Ontario. We really do want to see the agriculture industry in this area flourish.
Now, would you say that your customers overwhelmingly are local, or do you actually get some exports to the rest of the province and country?
Right now, personally, I am just doing local. It's what we've developed. We started with very small amount of capital, so we've developed very slowly, and we just basically do local. But we do have some farms and some businesses that are very unique and are doing more national and local Ontario, basically, so Southern Ontario based. Some of our products are going down there. The Thunder Oak Cheese Farm is one of the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. They actually will send the cheese to Southern Ontario. We have a flour mill here, Brill Creek, that's is producing more and more. So it's basically a capacity issue. We are trying to get that capacity going to be able to supply more of Ontario. But at the moment, a lot of us are just basically trying to get local and Thunder Bay District area fed with what we are growing.
Is it your hope, though, someday to be able to export to other places?
I'm not sure. It's personal, and every business has its own issues. I'm not sure if I want to do export into other countries. Ontario, yeah, I might want to look at that, but that's a personal thing on every business has to look at.
Sure. Now, I know it's a terribly inappropriate question to ask somebody how much money they make, so I would never ask you that. But I think people want to get a sense about whether or not you can be a farmer in Northern Ontario and actually make a living doing it. So tell us, do you?
Well, there's a lot of people that do make a lot of money making on the farms. We have some small-scale farms that are starting to wrap up. A lot of the beef producers in all of Ontario and all over Canada, a lot of them have a second income just because of what the farms produce. If you think of Food Free Day being on February the 7th this year, you've basically raised people have made enough money to pay for all their food for the full year. Well, that's only 7 weeks of the year that's being used to buy the food that people are buying. Mm-hmm. So yeah, farmers and dairy farmers are doing quite well in the area. They have 2-3 families per farm. Beef farmers, some people have large enough farms that can sustain themselves. We're still looking at how to do that ourselves personally, but we're getting there and we're being very close to that.
Okay, so I don't want to mischaracterize it. You're doing okay, but you're not making a living at this yet. Is that right?
We could make a living. It's just I have an off-farm job, and I quite enjoy that off-farm job. So right now I'm hanging on to it just because of we need to basically build up our buildings and have that capacity to actually grow more, to produce more, to have more product to sell. So it's saying that there are some farms in the area that do quite well and have both partners at home and are making quite a good living doing that.
How about you? Is this the whole family involved in this thing?
We have 4 daughters. They're all involved. They are all picking tomatoes with us and helping do deliveries, and they've basically been raised with that mentality of helping out. So yeah, it's a family business.
Is that their choice to do that, or is that part of the job of being a DeBruin?
It's part of the job of being a DeBruin. I mean, you could ask any teenage person, and I'm sure they'd rather be, doing other things. But we do things together, and we find that we're a very strong family for that, and they've got very good work ethics. So I'm sure they enjoy it. Any
one of the 4 that particularly looks like they're going to be the farmer going forward?
Right now, at this moment, probably not, but we're still have our hopes up.
Hope springs eternal when it comes to kids, right?
Yes, that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Henriette, it's awfully good of you to join us on the line from Thunder Bay tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Henriette DeBruin, the owner of DeBruin Greenhouses in Thunder Bay, Ontario.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.